creepy and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
The book of creations, all the races in the universe. And then somebody asked a great question. They said, yo, how am I supposed to trust you on knowing who the aliens are in the universe? So let me show you exactly how the book works. To start, I made the book for me, a way to research and to keep up with different beings in the universe, for me to better understand exactly what's going on, everything happening right now. So how can you use the book? Let's look at the book right here. I'm pull the book up right above me. Now, right beside that, pull up some type of AI. I'm going to use Grok. Each one has a picture, and above it, it has a description. You might not understand, but the AI, it will. So copy the entire paragraph right there, paste it into ChatGPT or Grok. The book of creation explains everything about them, including how they are related to one another, also their powers, also where they're from. But you will know this if you get the book and then you copy this paragraph and put it into the AI and ask it to explain to you so that you can do your research on every race in the universe. This one is for the chosen.
Chanel.
I'm going to ruin the truth. They are demons, not aliens.
Number 5 is made from the sweat of whipped male Abyssinian cats. I kid you not, and this even produced protests some years ago, animal rights groups, about how we should not be perfuming ourselves with the sweat of whipped male Abyssinian cats. Suddenly, you've got a real puzzle. Along comes synthetic perfumes, and the majority of them are made of synthetic versions of androgens. Perfume is made up of all sorts of breakdown products of male sweat. Isn't perfume supposed to smell good to guys? We have a deep abiding puzzle here. And there is an answer for it. Okay, the vast majority of perfumes are not purchased by men. The vast majority are purchased by women. In other words, most of the marketing decisions about what to stick in your perfumes are being marketed for people who are going to decide if it's appealing or not, people who have lots of estrogen in their bloodstream rather than androgens. That is thought to be the explanation for how it is that most perfumes are derived from male pheromones.
Perfume is toxic. Just use real scents like essentials oils or rose water.
Why did the Nazis try to open a gateway to hell, and did they succeed? This is Hauska Castle in the Czech Republic. It was built in the 13th century over a deep pit that the locals believed led straight to hell. Locals say strange creatures came out of it, like winged demons or half-human things. Many say the castle wasn't a defense against armies. It was meant to keep whatever was in that pit locked away. In the 40s, the Nazis took over the castle during the war. Heinrich Himmler and others in the SS were into the occult, looking for ways to gain power through supernatural means. They held the castle for about 5 years. During that time, they ran experiments to open the pit and pull out the demonic forces. People nearby reported seeing odd lights at night and hearing strange sounds. Some of the workers went missing. Some accounts mention mining the area around the pit and conducting rituals or tests with dimensional portals, possibly involving devices like Die Glock, a bell-shaped machine rumored to manipulate gravity or create rifts. Skeletons of executed Nazi soldiers were later found buried under the floors, hinting at internal punishments or failed experiments. There's also talk of them using the site for breeding programs to create a master race, but the focus was on exploring the pit's supernatural potential. The Nazis saw the supernatural and the occult as a path to racial and national revival, especially after the defeat and economic chaos of World War I.
Just like in the movie Hellboy. What exactly are we looking at?
Facts they didn't teach you in school. Pyramids are older than humans and were built by something that came before us. The government already knows how to stop aging, but keeps it from the public. We can't go back to the moon even if we wanted to. NASA didn't stop exploring the ocean, they just stopped showing people what they found. This woman on the plane really saw something she was never meant to see. Every war is planned years ahead by the same people on both sides. Stars fall because they are not burning balls, they are fallen angels. The internet was never made for us, it was made to study us. Astroworld was not a concert, it was a satanic ritual in disguise. Some mountains are actually giant trees that were cut down ages ago. There is something wrong and hidden in the Appalachian Mountains. Music frequencies were changed in 1953 to weaken the human spirit and control emotions. Our memories are updated while we sleep, that's why the past sometimes feels wrong. Old buildings are way older than history, says they just rebuilt over them.
Wow. Some artists took a real body and crucified it to see what it would look like. Why would they do this? It's because they felt that no one really, all these artists who were putting crucified Christs up, weren't doing it right. So they thought, let's test it. And they found a dead body, they removed all the skin from it, which is why you can see all the tendons here, and then they nailed it to a cross. And then it hung down, and then they took a cast of it to show other artists, this is what you should do when you're doing a proper crucified image, obviously mostly a cross. This was done in about the year, 1801, and it's called the Anatomical Crucifixion, and the guy was a guy called James Legge. Interestingly enough, the man whose body they used was an executed murderer. He was a Chelsea pensioner, so like an army pensioner in Chelsea, and he had shot dead another friend of his in the hospital. He was 70 years old when it happened, so he's probably suffering from dementia, they think anyway. But how imagine the horrific accident happening to you after you were dead, having been executed by the state. Your body was then pierced with a crucifix and hung up for the world to see as an artistic model for future generations.
Wow. Did they remove his, thingy?
This is a female. I call her Jane. That's the daughter of Seeger. And my colleague Ashley has incredible success with her. It was amazing to me. My native teacher, I initially thought this was just a male Sasquatch. My native teacher, here she is from a different angle, looked at that and said, wow, you filmed a female. Years later, I saw breasts on her, and I've seen her around, and I gauge what female Sasquatch do based on her tracks, which are the same size as the Patterson footage, and her interactions and the way she shows herself. She'll walk around a puddle, a male will blast through it. She'll make gentle, beautiful tree breaks that are precise, and a male is rugged and harsh and wants a big, giant, like egotistical.
Why don't they run away from you?
Right here, she's looking down at me. She's the last line of defense for me going into a position where I was going to get more footage.
Why did they let you get so close?
She didn't. I was moving in a ghillie suit, and I'd come, see there's snow there? I came in, I had success because it was a snowstorm so bad, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So I got into the snowstorm. After the snowstorm, this is the day after, they came back down the mountain.
Okay, interesting.
The aliens want to incarnate on this planet. And the reason they cannot incarnate here is because the spiritual vibration is too low. Later, I got the actual numeric measurement of spiritual vibration. Our spiritual vibration here is, most of the people are focused on the first three chakras. First chakra, survival. Second chakra, one-to-one communication, family. And third chakra is social hierarchy. They don't go any further in heart chakra and above. So they are all focused in the first three chakras, so which corresponds to very low levels of spiritual vibration. Like between 1 and 3, maybe 4 is for some of the people. But the aliens they're around 15, 17. It's way up there. Wow. But they call it ascension. They need us to raise our vibration. And the key how all other civilizations ascend, they go from voice to telepathy. And you become also psychic. Telepathy comes with psychic abilities. Then you finally disconnect from this materialism and become one leg stands on material wall and one leg is firmly stands in spiritual world. Then you become nicer and kinder and more enlightened. They want us to upgrade. We are overdue for upgrade. The planet is ready. The genome of the humans is ready. The culture sucks. The culture is over-focused on money and profit and survival and all of that.
Interesting.
There's a stone called the Russian Thunderstone. Have you heard of this?
No.
So like in the 1700s, they took a big lump of, I think it's granite from Finland, and they shipped it to St. Petersburg. And so this is how they did it. A system of rails, big steel rails. It took them forever. It weighed about 1,500 tons. It's about the same size as the obelisk that's sitting in Egypt, in Aswan. It's still in the ground. It's like 1,200 tons of granite. And you're expected to believe that they somehow were going to lift this thing up out of a quarry over these, like basically big hills and mountains, and put it on a little ship. You're absolutely delusional if you think this was a simple task that could be achieved with primitive methods and then ship that thing 1,000 miles somewhere. We can do things like that today, but it takes hydraulics and diesel powers and cranes and all that stuff. They may have had an entirely different avenue of tech.
The real question is, where are they and where did they go?
I saw it
This
myself. I couldn't
John Wick's material.
believe it. And it's just, just little bitty babies, just all quarter pieces. Their heads chopped off, arms, legs, just...
Hundreds of human fetuses, some possibly in the 6th month of development, were found stacked in a large shipping container picked up behind the home of a medical laboratory owner. Detective Roland Drowen said the fetuses, from the size of an egg up to as much as 4 pounds, were preserved in white plastic containers, packed in cardboard boxes and stored in the large container. The fetuses were discovered Thursday night after the owner of the 20-foot by 8-foot storage container repossessed it from Mel Weisberg because he failed to make a $1,700 payment. The company picked it up and brought it back. They noticed it was quite heavy. While unloading, a box had dropped and a fetus was discovered.
One of them fell down and hit me right in front of my feet.
Man, that's horrific. They must be stopped.
Nope, this was never supposed to be seen, as biblical creatures are not only being unearthed out of our rivers, but the final battle of Armageddon is officially upon us. People were terrified after scientists were noticing that the biblical prophecy of the Euphrates River drying up is real, and biblical creatures are being found awake, with verse Revelation 16:12's bone-chilling message that when this river starts drying up, it will be in preparation for a great army to cross and the start of our final battle. Haunting reports from experts even show 4 eerie petrified angels being found uncovered, completely bounded, exactly as the Bible described, with Revelation 9:13-21 warning when the water dries up and the 6th trumpet plays, the angels will be released to eliminate 1/3 of humanity. But it gets worse as experts sound the alarm that the river will likely dry up anytime within the next decade, if not sooner. However, others argue this river is not actually drying up at all.
It's time to get serious with God, folks.
This has got to be one of the craziest Stone Age weapons ever found. It's a dagger made out of crystal, and it was found in Spain dating back to 5,000 years ago. Finding a piece of crystal this big in the first place is extremely hard, and then flint knapping it into this shape would have been super difficult. And that's because unlike the smooth interior of flint, crystal has a bunch of little imperfections that make it a nightmare to flint knap. What might be even crazier than the rock crystal is the hilt and the sheath that it came with. They were carved of elephant ivory, and if you recall, this was found in Spain, meaning that this material had to be traded probably from North Africa all the way to Spain in Stone Age times, suggesting that the Stone Age world was a lot more connected than we once thought. But what's just as interesting is where this dagger was actually found. It was found in a megalithic tomb in Valencia. The tomb contained the body of a young adult surrounded by extravagant grave goods that came from all over Europe and Africa. This included 270,769 beads, all carved by hand. Because of how elite the goods were, the body was presumed to be a wealthy, powerful male and nicknamed the Ivory Man. But in 2023, thanks to new techniques involving tooth enamel, we learned that the Ivory Man was really the Ivory Lady. And her burial is the most prominent in all of Iberia during this time. But in the graves next to hers, they found other burials of high status, all of which seem to have been high-status women. Truly an epic win for the feminists. They also found these, but just don't ask me what they were used for. So yeah, 5,000 years ago in Spain, this region may have been ruled by a woman wielding a crystal dagger. If you want to learn more about ancient history, check out my channel North02 and follow for more.
Almost like they were queens of the Stone Age.
These Olmec heads are spherical, but they're carved with human features and ears and faces. Look at that individual. That's another ethnic group that seems to be represented there. That is also found amongst the Olmec sculptures of La Venta. Some glyphs around it, and the oldest representation of the feathered serpent as Quetzalcoatl
geometry. For example, that's the letter G in Freemasonry, geometry.
Is it geometry or is it Genesis? Genesis creation or is it geometry?
Geometry.
Okay.
Geometry. And you see the symbol is a compass which you draw circles with in a square. The compasses in the square, those are the two instruments of geometry. So you've got those juxtaposed, and then you've got the G in the center. Sometimes you've got the all-seeing eye, but it's usually the G, and that stands for geometry. And in the early 70s, I was, exploring different spiritual paths, and I was studying under a Brahmin priest at the time, and I was very interested in ritual and how ritual was a vehicle for perpetuating information and knowledge. Then in that, it was basically about how different cultures and different peoples, indigenous peoples and so on, how they solve the problem of existing in their environment through architecture. So it was everything from like a yurt, something as simple as a yurt, all the way up to a Gothic cathedral and everything in between. As I started studying into the history of building and architecture, I kept seeing over and over again Freemasons and their involvement. But
capital G is the 33rd letter.
Then when I get into Freemasonry, the way it works is, think of it this way. Think of it as a play with actors, and all of the officers, like say in the Blue Lodge, are actors, right? So you go in and you're a candidate, and it's like you're participating in a mystery play. And of course you don't know what's going on, so you're just passively led through the whole thing, but then you have to go through the series of rigorous tests. If you go into the Blue Lodge, there's a whole series. You've got what's called the Entered Apprentice degree, the Fellowcraft degree, and then the Master's degree. Each one of those has what's called a catechism. And what the catechism does is a series of questions and answers that guides you through everything that you did in this ritual. Now the ritual, think of it as a play in 3 acts with, say, 7 actors and then the candidate. So there'd be a total of 8, right? And then what happens is you're led in, you go through Act 1 of the play, and then you have to learn this catechism and master it to a pretty high degree of proficiency. And what that is, it's like the equivalent of learning the parts, the key parts of the actors in the play. And as you go through, the way the system is set up, it's quite ingenious. And then each degree you add to what you previously learned.
It's all fun and games until you're standing in front of a ritual fire under a giant owl.
This guy, Peter Layden, is a longtime tech expert and thought leader on the future, predicting technology of like the advancement and stuff. He believes within the years 2025 to 2050, at one point, we will have a global governance.
Oh boy.
Primarily ran by AI.
Oh my gosh, Jesus, come back.
He broke down the 80-year cycle, and he laid it out. He's saying 2025 is actually the beginning of this new cycle of technology. And he thinks it's going to be a crazy development in AI, clean energy, and bioengineering. And he broke it down, and he's like, the old tradition of capitalism is not really working.
Right.
It's starting to be outweighed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people protesting, like the gap between poor and wealthy is separating even more and more.
Right.
So he said, I think with AI, with all this stuff, it's going to flip it. He's like, yeah, I do see a global governance system towards like more of a overarching one world governance system ran by AI.
This just seems more realistic every single day.
I know.
Is the AI gonna try to kill us all?
Yeah.
Living off grid is looking pretty good right now.
A lot of people don't understand that there are actually 7 CIAs. There isn't one big monolithic CIA. There's the bureaucracy CIA, there's the drone CIA, there's the torture and rendition CIA, there's the Zionist CIA, there's the Wall Street CIA, and then there's the White House CIA, which is kind of closed down right now. The CIA made Bill and Hillary Clinton. They turned Arkansas into an aircraft carrier for guns, drugs, gold, cash, and small children. And I am against the decision that was made to allow George H.W. Bush to die without being indicted. George H.W. Bush is the master criminal in our era, and they're going to let him die peacefully. Barbara Bush is also equally culpable. Dick Cheney is the one guy I think we can hang. The whole Watergate thing was about getting the Democratic pedophile book. And I will tell you, if that book were to be captured today, I'm pretty sure Joe Biden's name would be in it.
I believe so.
every one of those examples, the work suddenly stopped, whether or not it's ancient Egypt, like in the Aswan Quarry, where they were taking out the largest obelisk ever made by far. Or you go to the Moai in Easter Island, where they were in the process of taking out the biggest Moai by 3 times they'd ever been done. None of those things made it out of their host stone, and then the civilization that was building it just disappeared. Whatever happened was sudden. It completely stopped any capability of continuing anything in the future.
They found several crafts. And this craft is rather large. I think something in the neighborhood of 20 meters in diameter. And so, which is about, what, 60 feet or 66 feet. And they encountered these 15 small beings that were gray in color, but they had suits on, but they were only about 4 feet tall. They encountered him. They had a confrontation with him. 2 Marines were killed.
You know how the Marines were killed? What type of
technology?
burnt.
They were burned in something, I think they called a laser or some kind of burning device. We fired first, and I believe they defended themselves. They saw this strange circle, and as they walked up to it, the 2 scientists that actually got up close to it, they realized it wasn't something that was created by a wind or the environment. It was something that appeared to them to be man-made. As they walked through this, a bluish atmosphere was created.
Yeah, encompassed them.
Right. And it was like each of them were in a sphere that they couldn't move in. And as they tried to move, they opened up in a what they called a paradise. It was green hills, plush meadows, and they thought they had died.
I mean, that goes in about 1 foot deep, right?
It has a horn nose at the end, and you can see here where a piece of rock has literally fallen away from the side of it.
So this would have been like the jaw of the snake, like a python head. And
I would imagine this has fallen off during an earthquake or some sort of natural catastrophe like that.
This is the
It does resemble a snake.
only reincarnation case scientists still refuse to explain. In 1956, in the small town of Redwood Hollow, England, a family lost their 2 young daughters, Emily and Grace, in a tragic car accident. Their parents were devastated. Months passed, then a year, and life slowly returned to normal. Until 1958, when the mother gave birth to twin girls. From the moment the twins could speak, things weren't normal. At age 3, one of them pointed to a birthmark on her knee and said, "This is where the car hit me." The other twin refused to sleep without the lights on, saying, "The man in the car comes back when it's dark." The parents were horrified. They had never spoken about the accident in front of the twins, but things got even stranger. The twins began asking for toys they had never seen, toys that belonged to Emily and Grace. They described their old schoolyard perfectly. Whenever the family got in the car, the twins quietly took the same 2 spots, the ones their sisters preferred, long before the accident. Desperate for answers, the parents took them back to their old village.
The devil told them that.
The Talmud and the Kabbalah are satanic.
The Babylonian
cults.
Talmud. Is
Yes,
that what it is?
yes.
Okay.
Those are satanic cults.
And are those satanic cults controlled, or were they created by these ancient Iranian bloodlines?
Yes, they were.
Please expand.
For instance, the Aldo Brandini is one of the ancient Iranian bloodlines. It's a famous Italian family. And Al is the, Dob is devil. Dini.
Wow. The people of the devil.
Yeah, the people of the devil.
Wow.
So they're definitely satanic. They're proud of it. They're open about it. We have a website, lorenmarais.info, and we have a Rothschild ball with photographs of the Rothschilds and their guests and members of their family doing satanic practices.
This is the masked ball photos?
The masked ball.
And by the way, they're called Venetian masks, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes, yes.
My son asked me this question: how did little itty bitty England somehow become a global empire? They became the world's first drug dealer empire. That's going to generate huge amounts of money. But the real trick that the English did was they fight a 6-year-long battle against us called the Revolutionary War. And they quit the war, even though militarily they're winning. And the reason they quit the war is because they had the Royal Proclamation in 1763 with the Native Americans. It gave the Native Americans everything from Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi, which meant that they couldn't exploit that land. But in the meantime, the agriculture practices that they were using in Virginia and North Carolina had wrecked the soil. The English were no longer making money off the southern colonies. What they realized, if they surrendered to us, it freed the British Empire to become the good guy. They would do things like pursue the abolition of slavery. But in the meantime, it would allow us to keep slavery, terminate the relationship with the Native Americans, steal their land, bring slavery there, and then grow tobacco and cotton on that soil. The surrender treaty that the British signed with us specifically allowed the British to stay economically in the United States.
Wow, that's crazy.
Crazy story. Agafia Lukova, she's lived in the Siberian wilderness since the 1940s.
Cool.
That's crazy.
In the 1930s, they were part of the Old Believers Orthodox. The Orthodox Church were heavily persecuted by the Soviets. Her father, Karp Lukov, decided to take his wife and I believe 2 of their children 200 miles into the Siberian wilderness to just escape persecution. They had nothing going out to the Siberian wilderness. On average, negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
How'd they do it, dude?
Agafia and another sibling were born in the wilderness.
Golly.
They learned to grow their own food. They hand make all their clothes with like hemp. This whole family lived without human contact until 1978.
Wow.
When it just so happened these geologists were flying over and they saw like farm and like a couple little huts. Like, what's that? But what I thought was sad is when these geologists came, they got diseases from this geologist and 3 of the 4 siblings died.
Oh no.
They didn't know anything about the outside world. They didn't know about the moon landing. They didn't know that the USSR had collapsed.
Wow.
Nothing. She had like this old Bible that she said has been handed down for her family for like 600 years or something. She like started talking about like the Antichrist, and she's like, from news that I'm getting from people that are coming to see me, she's like, I feel like the end is actually near. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I trust her.
They got guns now.
Good.
Yeah.
To protect against wolves or geologists?
There's a cognizance, I believe, within the intelligence community, particularly CIA, that there are humans among us that might be more extraterrestrial than human. And how do you identify them? That could be a major factor in why they were interested in that. And there's also the, I guess you would call contact tracing of like who's who.
Right.
And so what they did reveal that there was an interest in certain families.
How would you understand families?
I understand families to mean bloodlines.
Right.
That they were interested in certain bloodlines going back to
ancient times.
Who knows? Ancient times.
People are trying to tell us something without telling us something.
Right.
You know, it's like follow the money, right?
Yeah.
They're giving us hints of where we should go on this. And we have to pay attention to what they're not telling us and what they're telling us. And this came across because at one point, somebody sent us this long email. One of his most trusted advisors said, have you really looked, how much do you know about Greek mythology? It's like, whoa.
Who said that?
I can't say.
Okay.
So he came out and said that. It was a he. He came out and said, do that, right? And it's specifically talking about Prometheus. Now that gives the show away, right? If we take the Prometheus story as an encrypted story of what actually happened, we're getting close. And I think that is what it is. There, at some point, somebody did something they weren't supposed to do. And it might have jump-started civilization on this planet, right? It might have been that. But Prometheus suddenly became the thing. And so Tom is saying, what the fuck do we know about Prometheus? You know? And so I'm saying, let's take it easy. Let's go. You know, Prometheus was this guy who stole fire from the gods, right? For the humans. He was giving fire to the humans. Humans didn't have fire. They were freezing their asses off. Prometheus came down and said, here's fire, get warm, you know? And the gods didn't like that. So they punished Prometheus. You know, you're going to get chained to a rock, you know? You're going to be punished for the rest of your existence for this thing. So I said, let's go back and look at this. This is what they're trying to tell. They're trying to tell us something. And what is Prometheus about? It's about contact between the humans and the gods. And the one who made the contact was a god, not one of the humans.
That's right. And it was a god who was transgressing on behalf of humans against the gods themselves, sort of a rebel,
right?
You know, sleeper cell god.
Yeah. Which the Gnostics believed was the serpent in the Garden of Eden, that the serpent was God, that the God that we know of from the Bible was the imposter, the interloper, the guy who was not really God.
Jesus is the way. The other gods, they are the imposters.
I did see a skin suit of Donald Trump with a reptilian inside of it. And I
too.
mean, he has clones as well. When you get that high stature, everyone uses them. So, like Putin, which I've heard through extraterrestrials, he's like the 7th Putin. He's high business, so high retail. Hillary has a whole closet full.
Biden has a lot, I heard.
Biden was taken out a very long time ago. Obviously, towards the end, it was really obvious. There are beings that do help shut these things down. So that's where you find some of these people, maybe they're in mid-conversation or mid-interview, and they just blank out. This goes for celebrities, sports, politics, I mean, everything.
We seized airplanes with 20 tons of cocaine being flown by CIA pilots, CIA operations, and we were ordered to let him go. We would ask him, what do you mean let this guy go? Turn the drugs back to him, get the marshals to go release him from prison right now. That is a CIA operation. I'm thinking to myself, this is strange. A CIA operation, what are they doing with the coke other than we knew they were, at one point they were getting to this man right here, Mr. Ricky Ross here, and he was selling it to them. Then I find out that we arrested Ricky Ross because Don Lone was the one that set him up. He gets a life term.
And they set me up. Well, I wasn't even selling drugs no more. I quit. You know, I was out of the drug business.
Right. He was out of the business. I remember that. That's true.
You know, and that's another part that I felt I was betrayed in.
The United States was funding different wars with drug money.
Because when I'm asking Secret Society, Rob, do you have that clip with President Bush and John Kerry when they're asked about, I don't know if you've ever seen that before, when they asked about Skull and Bones. Play this clip and look at the reaction and how the discomfort of explaining. Go ahead, Rob.
What opened Skull and Bones, the secret society? It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go I'm on. sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web. Number 322. First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward. Are you prepared to lose? No, I'm not going to lose. You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret.
There isn't that vibe today with Freemasonry, right? It's not like people are hiding it today or uncomfortable with it.
Well, there are those, who take conspiracy theories, and there are real conspiracy theories in history, but, there are those out there who are, blaming Freemasonry for everything that's going on, and that's complete BS. It's just nonsense.
Freemasonry is evil. Opal? Man, this AI is getting real.
Wow, what a coincidence. If you don't know what that is, you might think that's some crazy planet with clouds on it or something, right? But it's not. It's a portion of the firmament, and it's drawn alchemically. It's drawn in pictures and depictions of Jesus at his baptism and otherwise. It's drawn all over the place within antiquity. I call it the apex dome. It is this thing right here that is casting its own image into our sky, which is what we call the moon, which is another world. It's the world above us. It's the world directly across from us when we look up. We can't see it though, because it's a part of the firmament. We don't have those same pillars of light and sky pillars and geoplasma columns that shoot up and light up the firmament so that we can all see it as they did during the Age of Light, which is also the timekeeping method for the Freemasons and the Illuminati. So yeah, we have the apex dome, which you see all those little stars? Those are all craters on the moon. Okay, that's how the light passes through, and it redirects the light, and it makes a star in our sky. There's 10,000 observable, approximately, craters on the moon, and there's 10,000 observable, approximately, stars in the sky.
How did those craters get on the moon, though?
Don't look at these people and judge what they would do on the basis of what you would do, because it's not the same thing. You know, orchestrating attacks on 9/11, which killed 3,000 people, around 3,000 people. To us, well, we wouldn't think about it, but even if we did think about it, the empathy with not only those that died and those that suffered horrors in those buildings as they collapsed, but all the families. We could never do that. Delete empathy, and 3,000 people dead on 9/11, and so what? That's the attitude that they have, and people can't kind of understand that. They think, no, they would never do that. Well, hold on a second. If you will take a little child before the age of 5 or 6 is when they want them, you will put them into mind control projects that involve grotesque trauma, emotionally, mental, and physically trauma. And you will sexually abuse them. You will use cattle prongs as a punishment and as a way of getting them into a state of total submission to your will. You will torture them. You will make them watch animals and children being sacrificed as a form of incredible trauma. You'll find out their greatest fear, and you'll make them experience it over and over again to break them mentally and emotionally. And you will do that over and over and over again. That's Father George Bush, and he's just one of them. You would pepper bomb Baghdad and have no emotional consequences. You would do 9/11, have no emotional consequences. You would put a virus out there to kill large numbers of people, no emotional consequences. You would put stuff in vaccines designed to affect people mentally, emotionally, and physically. You would have a eugenics operation. You would plan and scheme to dramatically reduce the population, and you would have no empathy with the consequences of your actions that others would feel. That's the mentality, Luke, that we're dealing with. And because they're not like the general human population. They don't see the world and they don't see life in the same way. And that's the force we're dealing with. And we need to get streetwise to that. And then we'll have a chance of dealing with it. Because why we say, they'd never do that. No, you'd never do that. They do it every day.
We wrestle not with flesh and blood.
The Anunnaki are from Nibiru, which is also known as Planet X. And what is Christianity? What is the symbol for Christianity? A cross, which is also the planet of the crossing, which is also Nibiru. And so when you start getting into all these little names and all these little things, it's really interesting because you start piecing these things together. Biblically, it said Jesus he went to the desert or something for 40 days, was tempted by Lucifer. 40 is Enki. Lucifer is Enki. They are all the same gods, just go by the different names. And so when you can start to understand and put these little patterns together, it starts to make a lot more sense who's who.
Jesus is real, okay?
Not only did the Ottomans put Vienna under siege twice, the second time Vienna was done. The Ottomans almost took over Austria like it's insane. What was to stop them from just plowing through the Holy Roman Empire after that? Taking out Italy. Austria was the linchpin. If they could grab Italy, the rest of Europe was wide open. It was Polish knights who actually wore wings as part of their uniform who charge into battle at the last minute and save the day.
What about Spain?
So the archives, they weren't built to protect knowledge. They were built to protect access to it. And this is where it gets really strange. A normal person like you or me, we can't just walk into the archives. Hell, you can't even do it even if you're a bishop or if you've been in the church all your life. To get inside, you need 4 main things. Number 1, you need a doctrine, which I definitely don't have. And number 2, a research reason that they approve. And number 3, a request for a document that they already acknowledge exists. And number 4, a clearance from someone appointed by the Pope himself. And here's the part that trips me out. I'm sure most of you have been in the library. They have like the index cards and stuff like that that you can flip through. Well, they don't have that there. There's no catalog. There's no, they call it the Dewey Decimal System. They don't have none of that stuff. Meaning you can only request something that you already know exists, which means the only way that you know it's there is if someone told you it was there. And if someone told you about it, the church wants to know who the hell told you. I don't know about you, but to me, that's not normal archive behavior. That's basically gatekeeping. Not basically, it is.
You don't hide truth unless you are involved in deception.
You ever notice something strange? Every time people talk about evil groups, they name everything except the one sitting in plain sight. The Vatican. Yeah, that quiet little city-state that somehow controls more power than entire countries. Let's start with the Knights of Malta, because most people hear that name and think it's some old religious club. It wasn't. It was a quiet power network, a kind of ancient intelligence circle dressed in holy robes. And here's the part people miss. Several of the men who built the CIA were tied to this same order. That's not faith, that's a recruitment pipeline. A hidden fraternity shaping governments behind the curtain while everyone else thinks it's just church history. And when you start digging into banking, it gets even darker. Bank of America, Union Bank, old money families running the financial system, all wrapped in Catholic masonry. People think banks move money. No, they move power. But here's the part nobody likes to say out loud. Europe didn't crown kings because of God. Kings ruled by divine right. But who handed out that right? The Pope. Not heaven, not angels. One man, one office, one system that picked families to rule France, rule Britain, rule Germany. Not because they were holy, but because they were useful. Call it what it is, global management dressed up as faith. The Vatican wasn't blessing kings. The Vatican was choosing them. If you control the bank, the crown, the land, and the belief system, who really runs the world? Not the kings, not the bankers, the one who told them they were allowed to rule. That's the real power.
This is just a theory, not a fact. I agree.
Politicians are simply the best of the servant class. They're not actually in charge. They work for the deep state.
Yeah.
And I define the deep state as European royalty, combined with the Vatican, combined with the P2 Lodge, Caesar's remnants, combined with the Chabad and Ashkenazi Jews that consider Jews to be non-human, not just Christians and Muslims, okay? We have kill rooms in Washington, D.C., and we have underground facilities in New York at the intersection of Lexington and Concord. And one name that continues to come up in relation to both pedophilia and 9/11 is Les Wexner, who is a multi-billionaire who is said to have funded both the Maxwell Epstein pedophilia entrapment operation and the controlled demolitions of the Twin Towers. You have to remember, the FBI was founded by a pedophile.
Yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover took small children from the mafia as gifts.
Yeah.
And J. Edgar Hoover also pioneered political blackmail.
Yeah.
In the United States.
I believe most of our government is controlled by demons.
This is full-blown Satanism and ball worship right in our face. It seems like every day, week, or month they're doing a parade, what they call a parade, so they can throw these things right in front of our face. This is obviously Baal, which is also Moloch. But that's not all. They have the BAPH one as well. And they actually show that Baal is literally a fallen angel, which I'll show you in 1 second. This was the flyer for this. Look how obviously satanic this is. Look over here. Obviously this has to do with spiritualism, the Bible, angels, and whatnot. And this angel right here with that little halo, that's a Statue of Liberty, Apollyon, or Abaddon. Lucifer. Now here is the bull with literal wings showing you he's a fallen angel. I gotta block out part of this one, but you can see it breathing fire. How descriptive. And of course, Baal worship is everywhere around the world. New York, 2022 Commonwealth Games, and really all over the industry completely. If you don't know, Baal was the ancient Canaanite god for a certain kind of ritual. But as time progressed, Baal started being called Moloch, symbolized by the owl, but neither the bull or the owl is what Baal actually looks like. And would you believe it? This is the same exact deity above my head, really popularized by the Knight Templar. As time progresses in this world, it really doesn't mind me with all the chaos and disasters going on in the world.
That is supposed to be me, Hertz. What did I ever do to you that you would draw that picture of me?
Everything.
Super times for all. No danger about. In fact, let me tell you, if you don't work in a hospital, you really are missing something. In fact, you're missing everything.
Yeah. Giants are in every culture's history. Every culture's got giants mentioned. ancient Indian Vedas, Native Americans, island of Malta, East Asian. Every culture has giants. And the Bible, of course. Epic of Gilgamesh. So giants show up all through our culture. And whenever I see that, a lot of what I do is just pattern recognition. And it's like, this flood story keeps showing up over and over, no matter what I'm talking about. The flood myth shows up, and it's always showing up at the same time as like the end of the Younger Dryas. Like these things, it's just the same pattern over and over. Maybe it's a coincidence, but if one culture has a story about a flood, then they have a story. If two cultures have it, it could be a coincidence. But if you get 40 or 300, then maybe there's something to it. Maybe it really happened. So I'm pretty sure that flood happens. These giant bones, calls the Smithsonian. They come over, they investigate, they take the bones, they go back, and then it disappears. Like that happens over and over through these stories. Is the Smithsonian conspiracies always involved? But
so are you saying the Smithsonian hides evidence of giants?
I'm saying that the conspiracy theory is that the Smithsonian hides evidence of a lot of things. The Smithsonian, of which I'm a huge fan of. Like if I go to DC, I spend 4 days there. I love the museum part. But what we don't see is we don't see the kind of the dark underside of the Smithsonian. Like when it was formed.
Like the Vatican.
The Vatican. We can talk about that too. The Smithsonian, I think the first director might have been John Wesley Powell. I could be fact checked on that. Who was, he spent a lot of time with Native Americans. He respected them. He saw them as very intelligent and resourceful. So they were well represented in the Smithsonian, but then he appointed, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was like the chief ethnographer for the East Ohio or something like this, some crazy title. And he gets into a position of power, and it turns out that sees Native cultures Native Americans as not as subhuman. He called them specimens. He would put like their body parts on display and stuff. Look at these Native American specimens. So there'd be all these discoveries of these amazing mounds, like the Serpent Mound in Ohio, and all this stuff all around the country. And the Smithsonian would say there must have been another advanced race here because Native Americans are they're savages. They couldn't never build this.
The Exorcist, people don't know The Exorcist was actually written by the CIA. It's a CIA script.
What? No.
William Peter Blatty, he did psyops in Vietnam for the CIA. And
what is the psyop that they're pushing with that? Oh, they're like, look at these crazy exorcisms.
Well, the idea is to scare the shit out of people, to remind them that the devil's real and go back to church so that they don't turn to communism and atheism. For example, some of the work carried out by the Psychological Warfare Bureau, orchestrated by people like William Blatty and Tom Dooley, included staging Marian apparitions in Vietnam to support the anti-communist ideology. So extensive campaigns were carried out by the Catholic Relief Services and American Psychological Warfare teams to drive peasants south of the demilitarized zone by telling them, quote, "The Virgin Mary has departed from the north. Jesus and Mary want you to go south." I mean, that's literally what the CIA did in the Cold War.
That is incredible,
in the psyops.
dude. I mean,
isn't that crazy?
I think when people say everything's fake and gay, they really don't understand how deep that statement really is.
The tinfoil hat. We go deep, homeboy. Eric, open your mind.
What do you think the international reaction would be to news that mummies were found in Egypt that predated the earliest mummies ever discovered there by more than 5,000 years? We all know this would be surely front page news from one end of the planet to the other. Yet the news that a 10,000 plus year old mummy was unearthed in America has elicited barely a whisper The Spirit Cave mummy that was discovered in Nevada in 1940. The tests revealed that the mummy was of a Caucasian origin with a long face and cranium that most closely resembled either Nordic or Ainu ancestry. In many ways, it has been rewriting history, yet it appears to me that there may have been and still is a cover-up concerning this mysterious mummy.
What? No way.
Solomon's Curse, the 7-foot 2-inch slave giant who broke 9 overseers' spines before turning 25. Alabama, 1843. 7 foot and 2 inches of muscle stood on the auction block in Mobile, Alabama. As the August sun beat down without mercy, the crowd fell silent. They had never seen a human being this size. Samson didn't look at them. He looked through them, past them into something they couldn't understand. This is Black AF history, the unwhitewashed story of America. It talks about the stories of Maroons, slaves who were once captured but managed to be free and live off the land the rest of their lives. This is the story of Solomon. 9 men would try to break him. 9 men would never walk again. This is the true story of the giant who refused to bow. But make sure you guys go ahead and follow and like, and also follow my YouTube, True Crime with Bella 1, for longer story times. The mobile slave market stank of human sweat and fear on that August morning in 1843. Wooden platforms lined the waterfront where ships from the Caribbean docked weekly, bringing their human cargo. Auctioneer Marcus Thornhill had sold thousands of enslaved people in his 20-year career. Samson emerged, bent nearly double through the doorway. When he straightened to his full height, women in the crowd gasped. Men reached instinctively for weapons they weren't carrying. His skin was darker than the Mississippi mud, stretched tight over muscles that belonged on draft horse, not a man. Scars crisscrossed his back in patterns that told stories of previous owners who had tried and failed to break his spirit. The chains binding his...
He looks too clean with a bow tie. He wasn't no slave. If you can't hear it, it's not free energy.
On March 19, 1922, Lenin sends the following directive to the Politburo. We must pursue the removal of church property. We must smash the clergy most decisively and ruthlessly, and put down all resistance with such brutality that they will not forget it for several decades.
И членами его являлись примерно 80-85% евреев.
Why isn't this in the history books?
I hear a lot about the multiverse. They believe that there are multiple universes out there, and they've actually found the edge of our universe.
Not only did they find the edge of our universe, but they also found what seems to be a merging part or the beginning part of another universe overlapping slightly. This is pretty interesting because now it proves like, wait a minute, there is a multiverse. We're not the only one. So what happens at the other side of a black hole? Could it be a white hole? So as energy is being sucked out of one universe, is it going in and creating another universe from scratch? Is that the Big Bang? I do believe that we're living in a soup of universes, like we're just one of many universes. There's a doppelganger potentially of you in a lot of these universes. So in some universes, you're not sitting here talking to me because this is not even your career.
Here's
Billy is cooked. Pray for him.
the part everyone missed. Listen to this. kind of more focus on was the Chinese, the moving of Chinese nationals by the thousands. So that became in our radar back in early 2023 out of the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. So we hit the ground there, and speaking with Texas DPS, they're like, hey, Jorge, like the past month or two, we're seeing 1,000% spike of Chinese nationals entering illegally here. And they're like, we don't know why and everything. And then, so we started working close with Texas state troopers. And what we found out was that Chinese migrants were paying Mexican cartel. This doesn't count the money that they're paying South American groups, and I'll kind of explain that.
Right.
Chinese nationals are paying cartels $35,000 per head to be smuggled into the United States illegally. So essentially the Chinese, what we saw was they were getting the VIP treatment. So what I mean by that is you're not going to see Chinese migrants traveling through Mexico, like walking on the side of the road, staying in stash houses. They're through WhatsApp and other communication outlets like Signal. The cartels kind of break down, this is the flight you take, this is the hotel you take, and then they'll kind of organize their smuggling. So what the Chinese told us is they found a loophole through Ecuador. So Ecuador does not require a travel visa from Chinese nationals. So then what you'll have is you have Chinese nationals land in Ecuador, where then Ecuadorian gangs will then coordinate their travel to Neocoli, Colombia. The same thing. So Neocoli, Colombia actually had so many Chinese migrants, they actually set up hotels strictly for the Chinese. So then Ecuadorian gangs will then work with Colombian smugglers. They'll get them to Neocoli, Colombia. From Neocoli, Colombia, the Colombian smugglers will then get them to Panama. And that's where they'll have to do the journey to the Darien Gap, but they'll be very protected by the narco coyotes. Essentially, the communication goes to the narco coyotes like, Chinese nationals don't touch.
Darien Gap is not a joke. No green screen. Haha. That's awesome. Look at that. No CGI.
The Kennedy assassination without talking about Israel, without talking about the Mossad. They're the main people involved. That's the main group involved. The prime minister of Israel at the time said that without nuclear weapons, Israel would not survive. Kennedy was asking and asking and asking for neutral scientists to observe the reactor. He continued to push for this with CIA Director McCone and finally was granted access. Israel, prior to the visit, set up a fake control room with fake control panels, and part of the agreement was that the inspectors were never going to be able to inspect the actual reactor. After that visit, Kennedy was quoted in saying, "Those sons of lie to me constantly about their nuclear capability." The Jewish community invites JFK to come to Dallas, which was sponsored by the Dallas Citizens Council, which was directed by Julius Sheps, who was a member of the local B'nai B'rith organization, the ADL B'nai B'rith, once again, a confirmed member of the local B'nai B'rith as well. Abraham Zapruder was also just so happened to be the guy that caught the assassination on film.
There's something weird. There's something weird.
You know, CIA was founded in 1947, Israel in 1948, and Mossad in 1949. A little bit of coincidence, huh?
Weird going on. And this is like 2,000 years ago, where we knew who they were. We know the people. We know they did it. Like amazing precision, amazing construction methods, incredible art, incredible engineering and architecture. All understandable, but yet more advanced than the techniques utilized in 2025 in the exact same area, which is weird. That's without a cataclysm.
Right. It's a nice criticism of modern architecture, to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, don't even go back 2,000 years, just go back to like the Gothic era with the churches and the cathedrals. I mean, Jesus, why don't we build like that anymore?
Right. Good point. But so you see a decline, at least in craftsmanship, that can be attributed to a changing of cultures. But this assumption that there's always this linear path of progression, and if you go back, they were dumb.
It's one of the biggest contradictions about Egypt. It's the technological progression. I mean, you're talking about a dynastic Egyptian civilization at least 3,000 years, right? So 3,000 years. But if you look at it from a technological progression perspective, it's almost like they went backwards. And then it's all of the best stuff is the oldest.
Okay, you have to be reading somewhere.
That is awesome. I wonder how they filter it. And why is the guy bringing NASA into this?
They found there was a Buddha statue once, and they found out that it was actually a mummified Buddha that they had covered with a statue. They did an X-ray on this thing, and inside of it is like an actual Buddha guy who is in a lotus position. They did the statue around him.
So these two brothers were digging for silver in Mexico, but instead of finding ore, they found Earth's strangest natural wonder. You see, Juan and Pedro Sanchez were nearly 1,000 feet underground in the Naica mine in Mexico when their drill suddenly pierced an empty space, which released a burst of scorching air so hot that it burned their skin. When they climbed inside, their lights revealed a chamber full of massive crystals, longer than a city bus and weighing over 12 tons, which crisscrossed the chamber like glass pillars. The cave reached 136 degrees Fahrenheit with 99% humidity, so deadly that even scientists in supercooled suits could only last 10 minutes. Tests later showed that these crystals had been growing for nearly 500,000 years, slowly formed by magma-heated water rich in minerals. However, when researchers drilled inside them, they found ancient microbes, which had been trapped inside and preserved for nearly 50,000 years. When the mining stopped in 2015, the pumps that had emptied the chamber were turned off, and the cave quietly flooded again. In the end, the brothers just hadn't struck silver. They had opened and lost Earth's most beautiful secret.
What happened to Hitler's guards after the fall of the Third Reich? The last of them later described the bunker's final moments. Number 1. Otto Gunsche, Hitler's adjutant. Captured by Soviet forces, he spent years under harsh interrogation. He repeated the same account every time. Hitler died in the bunker with no escape and no hidden plot.
Yeah, right.
Number 2. Bruno Gesche, a longtime member of the protection squad. He was taken to Soviet camps and held for a decade before returning home, where he lived quietly until his death. Number 3. Raucus Misch, Hitler's telephonist and the last direct witness. He saw Hitler and Eva Braun dead before fleeing Berlin. After years in captivity, he said Hitler seemed resigned, speaking only a final short line to those near him. Decades later, he recalled the bunker as a place of silence and inevitability, where everyone understood the end had already arrived, saying Hitler's final words were loyalty is the highest honor.
Hitler fled to Argentina. Everybody knows it now.